Started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I'm here with Leelynn Brady, who is sometimes Leelynn Reads on Instagram. She's a blogger. She's doing these book recommendations for us every month, and they're fantastic. So we're looking at diverse and inclusive books for sort of like almost all ages, like you've done middle grade, YA, and adult. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. But feel free to put your own recommendations in the chat. And if you have questions, use the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you have books that you've been reading and enjoying, let me know in the chat, and I will put them in a list that I send out afterwards with everything Leelynn recommends, as well as whatever is in the chat. So I'd like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting this in all of our programs. And I'd like to thank Leelynn for letting us share this program with other libraries because, it's what they call magical realism. We're real, we're magic. It's great. Okay, so Leelynn, where are we going first?
Okay, so we are going to talk about speculative fiction in this book. It's called Sky Full of Elephants by Sibyl Campbell. It asks the question of what does it mean to be Black in America when it is post-racial? The premise of this story basically is where one day all of the white people in America, maybe across the world, walk into the nearest body of water and they're gone. So now all other minorities, everybody else that does not identify as white, not white passing, they have to learn how to navigate their system again, right? Do you follow the systems that are already in place that were meant to be at a disadvantage, or do you build your own system because now you're the one in charge? And there is also the personal aspect of the main character, Charles. He gets a phone call from his daughter who has a white mom, and she was with her white family. And of course, she's been living on her own for a year after her whole family drowned in front of her, right? So she feels like her aunt, somebody that is also white, is living in some place that she wants her dad to take her to. And it's learning how to navigate that strained father-daughter relationship while also dealing with racial identity. What does that mean? What does it mean to be white, and what does it mean to be Black after no white people exist? And also, it's very interesting because it happened for a reason, and I can't say why because it's a spoiler, but it wasn't just like a rupture or anything, like something caused it, but not everybody knows what it is. And it does talk about what happened. So this one was really interesting. I read it this year for a book club, Bookish Black Lit, I think it was called. And I loved it except for the ending. I will say spoiler alert, the ending, I was like, what? But this one was very interesting.
Can you just give a quick definition of what is speculative fiction?
So the way I define speculative fiction is where it answers a question that maybe is not very prevalent in our world. So it makes you think about what if. Some other examples of this are like historical fantasy, where if there is a specific event that happens, what if it's changed? And a good example of that was like, what if the Civil War was actually a zombie apocalypse? And that's a different book that I can talk about, but it just makes you think about how your world would change if there's one element that is completely different from what is happening. And that's how I describe it. And that's how I have to think about it because that makes sense to me.
Mhm. No, the what if was that in my head as well. But like there's all these different I guess genres of all kinds of books. And sometimes we don't even know what they mean. It's just like almost a publisher's way of putting things in a bookstore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, if it just makes you think, what if, I feel like that might count, even if it's a very small what if, it could be a very big what if like this, but this makes you think it's not the world that you see today,
Mhm.
really.
That's really interesting. All right. Thank you. I'm
Oh,
going to pick that up because I do like speculative fiction.
okay. I will try to speak a little bit louder because I am at max, Lisa. I'm so sorry about that. But let me know if you can't hear me, okay? My second book is going to be Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I purposely did not share this in my first one because this is my absolute favorite and I was trying to lead up to it, but this is a young adult fantasy book. As you could see, Bree Matthews is a Black woman or a Black 16-year-old girl living in North Carolina. She is dealing with the loss of her mom, who died in a car accident, but finds out about a secret society that deals with Arthurian legend and Knights of the Round Table. And not only is she trying to process her grief, she's also dealing with microaggressions and racism in North Carolina while she's attending early college program, but also, did this secret society have anything to do with her mom's death? Was it a murder? Like what happened? So it's a lot of things. This is the fantasy book that I always recommend to first time fantasy people, especially because it takes place in North Carolina. So there isn't a lot of world building that you have to do, but there is magic still sprinkled in it. So they have a really good magic system, but you can kind of, if you go to UNC Chapel Hill, you can think of yourself being in this book. So that's why I recommend this one. It's so great. Tracy Dion is amazing. Love her.
I was gonna say she like burst onto the scene with this book. I just uh, in the series, and I think that she was one of the first really like uh for me like well-known Black authors writing, high fantasy and really killing it. I just thought she's just an amazing writer.
Yes, and the third book, Oathbound, just came out this year. That I was able to listen to a talk that she was in, and she said that it really tested her craft at to the point that she is going to be taking a break before she writes the last one. Like it really challenged her, and I was able to see that. So just amazing. Like I'm always in awe when I read her books. It's something that you can reread over and over again.
Love it.
Okay. I think I talked a little bit about this last time, but this one is The Unfinished by Cheryl Matthews. It is a young adult Indigenous horror. It is Mohawk tribe, and I cannot pronounce the official name for it, so I'm going to say Mohawk for now. Cheryl Isaacs is also a Mohawk author, so it is Own Voices. It's a horror in that the main character, Avery, um, awakens this evil entity called the Black Water, and it starts to kidnap people in her town. And apparently, this happened many years ago, and they didn't know how to, they stopped it before. Now she has to either stop it again or figure out how to completely end it because one of her best friends ends up being taken by the Black Water. So she's not only being haunted by it and it's trying to get her, but it is taking people from her life. And it does deal with her stories because this is a story that is very prevalent in her tribe, and she's not very close to her tribe. I know I talked about that myself with like my Chamorro indigenous heritage. So again, about a discussion on identity. Like, is she indigenous enough to really be the one to save her people? She's the only one that has access to the elders and the ancestors, and is that enough? And will she be able to save her friend? And will she be able to sleep again? Because it's a lot in her mind that's going on. And yeah, the way it ended, I was like in shock because there are some twists that I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of freaky. Like it kept me awake, actually, but it was
Nice.
really good.
Do you think that there was some parallels or not like directly, but some I'll say parallels, but it's not the right word, to the fact that indigenous people have disappeared a lot over history for different reasons.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And one of the things that they mentioned in the story was that they didn't really talk about the people that went missing the first time. It didn't make national news. It wasn't like, I think it was a call out to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, right? Even though in this one, it wasn't just women or girls that were taken, but I think, like you said, the parallels, and I know that's probably not the right word, but I can't figure out what the right word right now is either. But I think it does really bring attention to that because it's like, why, as Indigenous people, is the focus or the media attention not as strong as if it were like a white girl? You know what I mean? So they call to that. And I think that's something that Avery talks about too. Like, why was this never discussed? Why wasn't there any um search party or anything for the people that went missing before? And why is it only when her friend who's white gets taken that now there's a big search party happening?
Mhm. And do you think that YA books or teen books are good for a good platform for this kind of book and this kind of discussion?
I think any grade, or not any grade, any age range, young adult for sure too, because not only do a lot of them have to deal with the coming of age, but I feel like it's able to talk about these kinds of nuances in a way that is more accessible for all ages as much as possible. So even if maybe even middle grade might be a bit more accessible sometimes because they really make it relevant to the character and you kind of think like, oh wow, like I kind of dealt with that as an adult. Now this middle grader is dealing with it. But I like when YA talks about it because it's a little bit aged up, right, from middle grade. So it can have more of those adult themes, but also still make sure that the characters are learning about themselves and growing and becoming adults in a safe space. Well, as safe as the book allows it to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, as an adult, I like reading YA when I know it's a difficult topic because it makes it a little bit more palatable to me to like read very difficult things in a way that's written for middle graders or young adults because sometimes they're just terrible.
Yeah. And young adult authors are really good at making sure that they don't romanticize the tough issues, but still very much honor that
Mhm.
and talk about it. So I just really love YA. Like I am a YA fan.
As am I. So, all right, let's keep moving along.
Okay, next one is The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. It's a young adult historical fiction, takes place in 1426 Joseon area, so Korea. June Her herself was born in South Korea, so she writes a lot about her identity, her culture. As a member of the diaspora, she grew up in the US and Canada and South Korea as well. This one deals with missing persons case on Jeju Island. The main character, not Hwani, yes, main character Hwani and her younger sister Maywol went missing at one point when they were younger and were found unconscious near the body of a dead missing girl. And their dad took Hwani away from Jeju Island and became this really famous detective. And then 5 years later, went back to the island and then went missing. So now Hwani goes back to Jeju Island to not only try to find her dad, but also try to find the missing girls. The reason why the dad went missing. And it also deals with that strained relationship between Hwani and Maywol because they separated at that time. Um, Hwani went with the dad. Maywol became like a not a shrine maiden, but she grew up in a different in like one of the elders' house. So they were separated and there's that contentiousness of why did you get to go with dad and I didn't? And you have a lot more positive feelings about dad and I don't. And Hwani also doesn't remember what happened, but Maywol does. So there's that. And just again, more missing girls and talking about, well, are they actually missing or did somebody take them? They were all pretty is what they were called. So maybe they didn't actually go missing. They were just married off. So that discussion as well happens with the second June Her book that she wrote. So I really like it, but I've loved all her books that she's written so far.
Mhm. I love it when you have like, I don't know if you ever plan this, but like you sort of like sometimes have like similar themes or topics in some of your books. And I think that that to me makes me feel like we're more the same than different because like all these different cultures are talking about the same things, like having difficulty with real, father son or father child relationships and things like that. So having this wide range of books really makes me realize that even more than before.
Yeah. And I like it because this one is the perspective from the child. And then in the other one, you see the perspective from the father. So
Mhm.
you get two different perspectives when there's a strained relationship between parent and child. So I don't know if I did it on purpose, but maybe subconsciously I did.
Well, I think maybe like me sitting back and listening in, and I'm like, oh, she just said that in that other book. So maybe it's just the listening part of it. So, but I do appreciate it because it makes me really think that the world is different than what I maybe think it is.
Yeah. So next one's going to be really short. The title is called This Is How You Lose the Time War. It is a dual author book by Amal El Mopar and Max Gladstone. It is science fiction slash romance, and these two agents are queer. They are coded as women, is how I hear it, and how the audiobook was. Both narrators were women, and they are fighting this war. These two groups are fighting a war and are using time travel to fight this war. So you see them constantly go back and forth between the timelines, changing historic events that happened to get one over the edge. And these two agents, red and blue, start a written communication between each other, which eventually leads into banter, which leads to romance. And then why are they fighting the war? Are they going to become allies? Like, what does it mean to, why did this start? Like, why did this banter start? And how did they learn about each other? And then figuring out whether this war is worth it, and what are you actually fighting for, and are you that different from the enemy, perchance? It was very short. It's a short story, but it just made me think a lot as I was reading it. And it's part like their letters to each other, but then it also talks about the actions of what they're doing. So it's not just call and response, I would say. But I really like this one. This is my first time reading it. I read it for Read Queer All Year book club. So good. Really glad I read that one.
What was the purpose of the birds on the cover though? Like, are they actual birds inside or is it some?
No, they're not birds. I think it was just a way to show the different colors because one is red and one is blue, and that's how they relate to each other. I think one time one of them called them the cardinal, and then I forget what type of bluebird this is, but it's a symbolism of them and how they're so different, but they're the same
Mhm.
in ways that maybe they didn't think about. That's how I see it.
Okay, all right. I just thought it was an unusual cover for what the description that you gave, and I was like, how does that relate? But I get it.
Yeah, it is. I think when you read their letters and then you kind of listen to that, the birds make sense, but it's really not clear, but that's kind of how it's a very small, or not small, but low key symbolism, I guess.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so this next book, I forgot to borrow a copy from my library, but this one is called Razor Blade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This one is, yep, this is the cover. It is a crime thriller, so it's adult as well. Basically, these two dads, one is Ike Randolph, he's a black father. Buddy Lee is a white father. Their sons are gay and are in a marriage with a daughter, but they were brutally murdered. And these two fathers were also in the prison system. So they have ties to violence and gangs and whatnot. And they decide to come together to find out who killed their sons and also possibly get revenge on the people who killed their sons. So it not only talks about race as well, because I think Cosby does it really well where Ike, who again is the black father, he's has a thriving business and he's successful, right? And then Buddy Lee, who is the white father who should be, and I'm putting that in quotes, the one who's thriving is in reality the one that's struggling and does not have a good life. He's dying, he's an alcoholic, like he's not doing so well. And so how did their sons even get together and get married and love each other? And why were they murdered? And then I think something that was also important as well was the fact that when their sons were alive, they had a really hard time accepting the fact that they were gay. Like, I don't think either of them went to their wedding. So now that their sons were murdered, they're trying to rectify that because they did love their sons, but they just were not accepting of the fact that they were gay. So did you actually love your son? Or are you trying to make amends now that they can't accept it? So that one was a tough one. I feel like that should be like a short series on AMC or something, but it definitely, makes you think about revenge and even, Ike's son. Not only was he queer, but he was also black. So having those two against him in a world where it's, made for him to struggle. And why did he have to die? Why did his husband have to die? It's it was a tough read. That was also for booklets, book club. that I read, and it was a really good choice.
Mhm. Is this a departure for S.A. Cosby? Because I thought he wrote pretty much straight horror.
I think so. This was my first S.A. Cosby book. I was told that maybe I shouldn't have started with this one, but I'm glad I did because I'm not really a horror fan, right? I know I've been putting horror in it in my choices, but I really stray away from that because I don't like to get nightmares. So this worked out for me in that it wasn't straight horror, but there were horrific things that happened. But
Mm,
I would say it's a thriller because there's nothing like supernatural about it. The horror is in the act of the murders and the revenge.
mhm. I don't want you to give any spoilers on it, but did you feel like it had a good resolution?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Then it's more possible for me to pick it up because I need to make sure that like there's something good comes out of it or we know what happened or something like that.
I was worried, but it actually ended in a way that I would be safe to say you will like it or you will
Well,
read it. Yeah.
okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, two more. So the first one is A Spark of White Fire by Sango Mandana. It is a young adult science fiction slash fantasy mix. It's inspired by the Mahabharata and other ancient Indian stories, and Sango also is Indian. So in this one, the main character, Esme, she was sent away from her mom when she was like a baby, so she's been separated from her family, but she should actually be the leader of her kingdom of Kali. And her uncle actually, like, I guess, killed her family or killed her mom or dad or something and took over. But she ends up entering a competition to win what's called a sentient warship called the Titania to help her brother, who is still in the limelight, who is still known as the royal heir, to help him gain that kingdom back. This is the first in a trilogy, so I'll be honest, I haven't read the third one yet because the first two really like messed with my heartstrings, and there's a lot of familial drama happening because Esme couldn't reveal who she was, so she had to have her own found family and she had to really hide herself. But then, as she's trying to help her brother, they're kind of like, are you just trying to steal the throne for yourself? And she's having to address that and learn about her family again, but also make sure that she can trust them because she also doesn't know them. So that kind of familial strife, I guess, or tension hurt a lot for me too, because she grew up by herself pretty much. And I'm like, she just wants to help you, like, let her. But this is the first one. I really like the second one, but you really got to start with the first one first. So really
Yeah.
good trilogy.
I always read everything in order, so I would do that. But I've always find it interesting when, girls or women have all these barriers to just being helpful. Like she's not even trying to be in power, but people are still, kind of like keeping her down.
And I feel like it's because even though she wasn't the one in the limelight, she shows that she's stronger than her brother. So I
Mhm.
think that is what makes people think, well, is she really going to give you that power if she helps you, or is she going to take it for herself? And she never saw it that way.
Hmm.
So like, well, why would you even think that just because I had to be more powerful than my brother because I didn't grow up in this kind of luxury.
Yeah.
So that too, it's like, good intentions and it's outside people that are putting drama in people's heads, I guess.
That's right. Or just putting those barriers in their way so that they can't be who they are.
Exactly. And my last one, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. This is middle grade fantasy, so I got all the ages. Um, Tristan is dealing with the loss of his best friend in a bus accident. He felt like he couldn't save his friend, and he really holds that survivor's guilt with him. And his friend Eddie has a book of stories that he would write. And one day that book gets stolen by, I don't think I see them on the cover right now, but there's like a little doll type thing that like steals it and takes him to this um world called Mid Pass. And Tristan is having to connect with Black American stories like I think it was John Henry and Bear Rabbit and all these types of stories that helped Black Americans during like slavery and discrimination have some positive light, like a way to deal with what was going on, but they're actually real people in this world. So he has to help them and somehow convince another god, Anansi, to stitch the hole that Tristan punches, or else the world's going to collapse. So not only does it deal with the Black African American mythology that was really prevalent back in like slavery time and whatnot, but it also again deals with grief, survivor's guilt, deals with race as well. One of the themes that I thought of when I was reading it was the long-term effects of slavery on Black people in America. And there was a certain scene in this book that really just kind of made it very visual. And I don't want to spoil it because it does have something to do with the plot, but I think it really, and like this is a middle grade book, so it kind of makes it obvious, but in a way that makes you think like, wow, there is a long-term psychological effect on what happened in generations past, even though we're not living in traditional slavery right now, it's still very much ingrained in our generation. So that one it was tough to read sometimes, but it was such a really good middle grade book. And I'm glad that I picked it back up again because I hadn't read it in a while, and it's one of the best like mythology own voices books that I've read in a while. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So we have a couple more minutes, and I just wanted to ask about that book. It's Kwame Mabalia, right? And and Kwame Alexander and Jerry Craft. There's several Black men writers who are writing to Black boys about, or for Black boys, and they're very popular with everybody. But where does that come from? Like, why is that so necessary that we have books that are specifically not specifically for boys or boy boy identifiers, but like you know, for each gender, I guess.
Well, and I feel like there's a lot of books that are catered toward women or girls, right? And boys don't always see themselves as the main character in their story. And even more so, Black boys. It's either a lot of the stories that I see, they're either a side character or they have to deal with some sort of violence against them, or, they're not just be able to live and enjoy their life and just learn and grow. And I think it's important that authors like Kwame Mbalia, and there's a lot that it's almost like a love letter to them to be like, hey, your stories need to be told. You don't have to be just a side character. You do not have to be defined by the color of your skin. You can be a hero.
Mhm.
Whatever story you want to tell, you can do it. And I feel like hopefully this will be a way to encourage other young Black boys to be like, I want to tell my story and it's worth reading. I know publishing, it's like things have to sell, but I hope this shows that it's worth buying because people want to read it. It's worth selling, I guess. And I hate saying that because it's not like, just a monetary thing, but I know that that's how publishing has to work. If they don't feel like a story will be sold, they won't risk it. But I think it's worth that risk.
Mhm. Well, I know libraries especially demand those kind of books too, because they want to be able to serve their entire community. So
That's
they are selling, but I'm glad that there's so many authors out there that are doing exactly that, showing kids and people that they can be the hero of their own story. I love it.
that's always been my goal when it comes to talking about diverse stories is that, we grew up in a time where characters are very much the same. They either look the same or had very similar backgrounds, and showing that we can have similar, instances or situations, but we can all still have a space to tell our story, and it's worth telling.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Leland. This has been amazing as always, and I will send out the list to everybody and the video recording. So I hope you all share it and enjoy it again. And I will see you next month.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Happy reading.
Bye.